Some have been promised an existence which no dream can surpass. But I promise to those who call on my name that they shall walk through life as if it were a dream. All that they can fancy shall be theirs. The Book of Eternity. From Kallipolis, greetings. I hope this letter finds you well, or, for that matter, finds you at all. It's been far too long since I've seen you, and I hope things in Sybaris are going, at least, well, tolerably, if nothing else. The Sybarites and their slaves who truck the endless wagons of goods into the city are next to useless when it comes to news of that principality. Something about trade secrets, they always say. I did manage to find a hanger-on from one of the caravans, though. I stumbled into him when I was at the Magadan. Do you remember the Magadan? It's still the same as always. The one almost nice spot in the whole city. Anyway, I found this man half slumped over his table, so loaded with wine that he could barely string a sentence together, but I managed to wring a few words out of him. He said that the factories have been working overtime, and that the whole city is in a buzz right now, with something going on. Though whether or not he was telling the truth, I'll never know. On the way home, a few hours later, I found him naked in the gutter with his throat cut, and a few of the street kids were trying to lop his legs off with rust-covered pocket knives. It's funny, the wagons full of food pass down the Silver Way every single day, and yet half the lower city is still starving to death in the streets. Well, it's not funny, I guess, but I think you know what I mean. I miss you. I miss having someone to talk to that I can trust somewhat. I haven't been sleeping well. About 2 weeks ago, a month ago, who knows. I started having trouble sleeping. I just would lay in bed, tossing and turning for hours. I feel tired, but sleep still just won't come. It's almost like I'm too tired to fall asleep. I'm usually awake for the matins bell, sometimes even prime, and I shamble off to work. Luckily, they've just had me sat mostly doing translations for them, at least for the past little while. Matins just rang not too long ago, and, well, I'm still awake. I'm exhausted, but I was just laying in bed for an hour with no results. I really do wish I could sleep. Do you ever remember when you were young and you wanted nothing more than to stay up past your bedtime? It feels like the more I stay awake, the more that my personality is seeping out of me and into the air. It's harder to remember things these days, harder for me to care about anything, to bother about it when I get shoved in the street or yelled at work. It's lonely here without you, and that feeling only grows in the middle of the night when I sit at this desk, tired but still awake. It's so bizarre. It's always twilight. Always feels half like the day and half like the night. And yet, something about the quiet hours when the city sleeps is both fascinating and terrifying. When I'm awake here at the desk or sitting on the edge of the bed, I look out at the window and I see the completely deserted street. A few dogs might wander by or the occasional city watchman, but it feels like me and the city, we share a secret with each other. Like it knows I'm awake and yearns for the experience of me being the only one awake to see her. My eyelids are so damn heavy, and my eyes fill with water the second they aren't closed. My head doesn't feel like it's on right, and my body is starting to feel like a corpse that I have to carry around with me. I look at the bed and I start to feel angry, like the blankets are laughing at me, conspiring with each other to stop me from sleeping, mocking me with their uselessness. Sorry, it's been unpleasant here. I'm just tired. It's hard to keep my thoughts focused. I think we have rats again, or at least the neighbor does. They come out at night and I can hear the little monsters scuttering around inside the walls and rummaging the kitchen when I leave it. I'll try and get rid of them by the time you're back, which I hope is soon, so write me if you happen to get the chance. If I catch them, I could always sell the bodies for a few extra coins, I suppose. I tried to catch one with a knife the other day when I heard him shuffling under the bed, but he disappeared before I could find him. I think I know someone who can get me a crossbow, or at least a sling, or a handful of rocks, something to shoot the bastards with. Do you know what it feels like when you've spent weeks barely sleeping and you're all alone? You're too tired to even talk. You can't connect with anyone. You only have enough energy to try and wipe some of the desolation off your face before you go out in public. The Nash is starting to take hold of the block again. Only a matter of time before the watch comes to clear the street off. It started about the same time that the rats came back, now that I think about it. I'll be right back. Sorry, rats again. Okay, sorry. Something about having missed this much sleep is almost... It's addictive. Your mind and body start to warp, conforming to the idea of being some sort of shambling night creature. After 2 weeks, you start to look at your bed with a sort of fear and loathing. Laying in bed wrapped in the blankets feels like you're nailing yourself into a coffin, sentencing your thoughts to death and forcing the nighttime city to live without you. I trailed off as I was writing this. It's been a few hours, if I'm not mistaken. I may have slept, though I'm not quite sure at this point. Sometimes I'll come back to myself and realize I've just been staring at the wall for an hour with the same absent memory as if I had been asleep. When you don't sleep, the waking and the dreaming world just start to blend into one another. They just rung the terce bell and the streets are starting to come back to life again. I can see the watch tramping along outside the window and the crowds of people are shuffling back and forth. They're starting to put up posters. The Nash is definitely spreading on our block. I can hear it in the distance, that and the rats. The rats scuffle at the walls and the sick cry and wail far off into the distance. I can see the wardens and the stewards rumbling by with corpse carts, and I can hear them throwing bodies into the harbor. I can see the appeal of the Nash. I haven't cried in so long. It must be years now at this point. I think the problem is that once you start crying, there's just no way to stop it. When you shove down those emotions for so long, ignoring them and letting them build up, the emotional weight of decades and centuries, I don't see how you could ever stop crying once you've truly started. When you fill your stomach too full with something noxious to the body, you vomit it out. And I think when your mind is just too full of suffering and misery that you vomit your soul out through your tears. It's the evening now. Well, it's still twilight, of course, but none and vespers are over. I went and I walked. I walked because I was too tired to do anything else. As I walked along the gangways, I gazed off the parapets into the foaming harbor below. Drowning just feels like falling asleep, you know. I drowned once. The water looks black and hostile, but a fleet just came in, so if I jump, I'd probably just smash against one of the decks as opposed to hitting the waves. I walked down to the harbor and I watched the new slaves come in. Hundreds of them, all branded and looking miserable, fresh out of the mud by the looks of them. They were auctioning off the ones that weren't already marked for the princes and sold off. They sold off the ones that weren't marked, and they sent them shuffling off with blank dejection, repeating a familiar fate over and over. I went into the Magadan while I was there, and I tried to buy some lotus, but it turned out I didn't have any money, so I came back home to finish my letter. I'm afraid of that feeling when you're laying in bed wrapped and warm. A breeze blows through the windows, and you fear the looming specter of sleep, which you know could crash down on you any second. A little microcosmic death. I heard, well, they put up announcements, the prince and the officials, he's saying that there's nothing to worry about, the same he always says, that the Nash can't spread to the faithful, that it's punishment for those who don't believe, to those who aren't worthy. I hope I'm worthy enough, but I don't know. I pray, but there's others, and there's mutterings. From deep in the bowels of the city, I hear it on the corners, whispered in the dark nooks and the alleys. The rats know it, the sick cry it out. They all tell me, "He lies!" I don't know what to think, or if I can even think anymore. They're purging those who are sick and dumping them into the harbor. Goodbye. I want to sleep. I miss you. The rats are scuffling again, and the bed is making fun of me. I can hear more people wailing and crying off in the distance. I I think someone is knocking at the door. It could be the watch, so I'll finish this letter when I can. Best.